Heroes are an inspiring group of people, every one of them from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen to the everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell. The doctor saving lives at your local hospital, the war veteran down the street who risked his lives for our freedom, the police officers and firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling, but there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored. The entrepreneur, the creator, the producer, the ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what, I can fix that, I can help people, and I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world, others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks of the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1. Hey, hello, and welcome back to The Hero Show. I am on the line with Lisha Davidovits. Lisha, are you there?
Yes, hi, I'm here. Thank you for having me on your show.
Awesome. Yeah, glad to have you here. It's really cool. We were just talking earlier about your name, Davidovits. That's a complicated name to pronounce. I got it down though, so I feel like we've started the show off on a good note.
I know, it starts to roll off your tongue, huh? It's just...
Yeah. So unfortunately, your kids have to learn to spell that in elementary school. You said you had a couple of kids in elementary school, right?
Yeah, they've done well with it.
Awesome. So
done.
yeah, they're doing good so far. So Lisha, let me just introduce you a little bit. You are a personal executive coach. You've got 14 years of experience in coaching. You said you worked with the Dale Carnegie Institute. You do performance consulting. You've got working with client relationships and senior management for Fortune 500 companies for the last couple of years. And you just sort of made a transition from working for someone else doing that kind of coaching to starting your own business, right? So does that sound about accurate for where we're at?
Yeah, I mean, there was a gap between when I was working at Dale Carnegie and then starting my own business. So, we were talking about stories, and there's a story that's woven into that journey that brought me to where I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start off on the show. I start this off the show same way as everywhere. Is what are you known for today, right? If someone's going to call up Lisha and say, Lisha, I want your help. What is the reason they would be calling? What are you known for?
Yeah. Well, this lights me up because this is my passion, and where there's so much gratitude to be able to do this is taking people from where they are to where they want to be. And, sometimes even shaping, like, what does that look like? There are people who are, in a place where they feel good. They've, they kind of have it all or have a lot going on, but feel like there's a missing piece. And it's kind of like Shel Silverstein's book. It's like that missing piece. And so they come to me and we work together to look at that missing piece. What is that? What does that look like? How does that connect with one's values? And then taking them to that place through their journey of being courageous and accessing their own creativity and resourcefulness and growth and development. And it's so exciting and rewarding because people really are able to achieve so much more than they realize. And we each have even more potential in us than we know. And I help people uncover that and remove those layers that are kind of, hiding it a bit and letting them see all of their amazing qualities and potential.
Awesome. So are you doing that mostly with like executives still, or are you working with moms, or are you working with entrepreneurs, stay-at-home working moms? Like who's the audience that you do some of this coaching with?
It runs quite a broad spectrum. They are people who are professionals. There are executives where they have reached this very high level and have this feeling of like, well, I've got it all, but my life doesn't feel quite right. And so it's helping executives who have been high achievers, have achieved a lot in their career, but are looking for something that's missing personally. Oftentimes there's, maybe a lack of or a shortcoming in emotional intelligence, and tapping into that emotional intelligence helps them then build connections with family that is maybe, gone by the wayside, or other connections. So it's looking at with executives at that high level, looking at their life from other sides and helping to, round that out.
Yeah, we talk frequently about when you get into either building a business or running at high levels with if you're an executive of a large company, is being aware of the monster you're building,
Mhm.
right? And making sure it's a monster you want to live with, right?
Right.
So you're helping them sort of shape that into being something they actually do want to live with. They're excited to be doing the work they're doing and still have the life they want while doing it.
Right, exactly. And also looking at that separation between doing and being, because a lot of high achieving people are people that have these very big ambitions. They're like, well, I have to do this. And, then they maybe avoid, or there are certain things that are stopping them. And it's because who they're being isn't aligning with what they're doing, or they think that they want to do it because they feel like they should, but that's not honoring values. So it's really kind of doing this deep dive of like, is this being your authentic self in what you're going after? Are you doing it because you think that you should do it? Is this really what you want? What do you really, really want? And kind of, putting that magnifying glass under it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's an interesting discussion to have with people, because I know for the longest time you think you know what you want
Mm-hmm.
until you get it, and then
Yeah.
you realize that maybe that's not what I wanted, right? And like, just as a personal example, I know the first 5 years of my business, one of my goals was, it was a revenue goal. I was looking to hit a specific revenue goal,
Yeah.
and then I hit that revenue goal and realized that I didn't need that much money to live the life I wanted to live.
Yeah.
So it was beyond where I actually needed or wanted to be.
Mhm.
And then the other thing I realized was that that revenue goal didn't take into account some of the other things that I wanted, which was like time freedom and location freedom and the time that I wanted to spend with my family, and realized that like I was going for something that I thought I wanted, and then you realize you don't want. And
Yes.
um, where I've come down was realizing that like what I enjoy most is I enjoy the journey, right? The
Mhm.
journey of going from where I was to hitting that goal was actually the thing that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like, how do I set myself up to have cool journeys when I'm building something that allow me to keep the things that I really want, which was like the time freedom, the location freedom, that kind of stuff.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a huge realization. And there are people that I've worked with that haven't quite gotten to that point. They think they want something, but haven't really looked at like, well, what does that look like in that sense of, fulfillment, whether it's going to be there. And a lot of it's connected to values. For you, it sounds like there wasn't so much a value of money. You thought maybe that's what it was, but then there was that realization, no, my true values are a value for travel and for family and for freedom. So once
Yeah.
you start saying like, what are your core values? That's when there's the neediness that comes out of coaching.
Yeah. And what's interesting is, after having that realization
Mhm.
and changing what I was doing, I actually surpassed my revenue goals. And because it like by a long shot.
Yes.
Um, and so it exploded my business because I was actually focusing on the things that really drove me.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when we
So
do what we love, we live a life that we love, and other things will fall into place. It's about that passion that's in the heart and who we're being, rather than I need to do this. This is success. Like success doesn't look like something; it feels like something.
yeah. And one of the discussions I was having with my friend and business partner the other day, we stayed up to like 4 a.m. talking about this, actually, was this idea that when you are creating something, you have a couple of options. You can create derivative, or you can create new.
Mhm.
So like when you learn something from someone and you're like, I'm going to go and implement that, it might be really good and beautiful to
Yeah.
do something like that, but it's derivative value, right? You're just duplicating something that already existed,
Mhm.
or coming in and creating something new in the marketplace and adding your own value, and unique perspective on something like that. And realizing that for me specifically, it was like, how can I transition to doing more of, instead of creating derivative value, creating innovative value. um, and that was it it was something that I've been doing for a while, but didn't have words to put to it until we sort of discussed it.
Yeah.
But it's that same idea, right? You're looking at what is it that actually really drives you, what is it that you want to be doing.
Mhm. Yeah.
um,
Absolutely. Or sometimes it's like, you kind of know what you really want to do, but there's some stuckness. And I work with clients that are also stuck where, they have a certain dream and they're just, they're like, it's here and I'm here and I just, don't know how to get there. Or they, there are all these saboteurs that start kicking in as soon as we stretch our comfort zone. Those, saboteurs that are kind of that, inner critic of like, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this, what are you thinking? Like those start sinking in to protect us. It's, a survival mechanism, but they're not serving our best interests. So I work with people a lot too on quieting those saboteurs and accessing what Shirzad Chamine calls the sage voice, or that all-knowing looking out for our best interests.
Absolutely. So I want to transition a little bit like this. So as a good idea of like where you're at now and what you're doing, what you help people with, what I want to talk about is how you got there, right? Every hero has an origin story, right? So it's where you started to realize that maybe you were different, that maybe you had superpowers, that maybe you could use them to help other people. And it's where you started to develop and discover the value that you could bring to this world. Sort of tell me how that started, how you got, the journey for how you got here.
Yeah, thank you. Well, what's exciting for me is the awareness that I had this ever since I was really little. I used to go with my mom when I was in elementary school and she was getting her nails done. And I would love sitting there because I liked talking to the other people that were waiting in the waiting area and just, talking to them, hearing what they were sharing. I was just so curious about people. And so I've had that curiosity. And then, getting older, I would just have conversations with people. And then I'd, go home and I'd say, oh, so-and-so was telling me this, or I would tell friends and they would say like, well, that's interesting. People, don't usually share that much about themselves. And so I found, okay, there's something there where people are, feel safe sharing more than they usually do with me. Maybe I'm a good listener, but I love and am fascinated by people and what makes them tick. And so I think people can sense that. So it was kind of, having this sense of curiosity and, just enthusiasm towards learning about people. And I remember even like I was on a train one time and someone was, talking about like, oh, yeah, I'm a little nervous to go visit family. And I was like, oh, why? And, their story went on. It turned out like, they were, they like broken their parole to go visit family. And I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe this isn't a good superpower of, people telling me everything. Like this is too much information. So it's like, but it's great because, it's those, if you were talking about the stories, like I love hearing people's stories and people's journeys and experiences and learning. I think about how I have my own life. And if I live in this tunnel, my experience and perceptions and views are going to be so narrow. But by learning about other people, it's just, broadens the mind and the spirit and awareness. And so it's so good to travel too, because then you experience different cultures. And so having that fascination and that sense of like, ooh, there's something about this person, and then engaging with them and being like, yeah, this person's rich with, interesting information, experiences.
It's really fascinating because I had a similar experience growing up. And I know I'm not sure how common this is for people who do this kind of work, who do coaching and stuff like that. But I remember in high school, my spiritual mentor at the time, when I graduated, pulled me aside and was like, I have something I'm going to tell you that I know you're not going to believe right now. But he's like, I just need to tell you because it'll make sense later. And he was like, you need to be careful what you say and who you say it to, because people will do the things you tell them. Right? He's like, people will listen to you when you speak. And I remember I was like 17 at the time, and I was like, whatever, right? Like that it was, it was way over the head kind of thing. And I was, I wasn't ready for the message. He knew I wasn't ready for the message, but he gave it to me anyways. I remember it was 3 or 4 years later. I was in college, and one of my best friends at the time had told me, like, he's like that you're one of those people that ooze trust. And he told me it was green. He was like, you ooze trust, it's green. That's why people talk to you and tell you things. And that year, one of my, someone that I looked up to, like a mentor of mine in college, we had sat down and we're talking through a whole bunch of like relationship stuff. Because he was getting ready to get married and some other things, and like all this like high level, like deep stuff for, you know, life lasting decisions he was going to make. And he was chatting with me about them. And over the next couple of weeks, he made a bunch of decisions in his life that were like a direct result of the things that we had talked about.
Wow.
And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh crap, like he actually made life commitment decisions based on things that I said to him.
Yeah.
And it was like the weight of what my mentor had told me in high school, like finally like landed on me. I was like, oh, I do actually have to like care about the things that I say to people because they listen. So anyways, it's interesting that you've had sort of a similar experience, realizing that people are, you know, they'll pour their hearts out to you. And then, you know, if you offer any sort of advice, a lot of times people will take it and change their lives based on that stuff.
Right, exactly. Yeah, which is, you know, I feel like it's such a gift and something that I'm grateful for, because I had people who have come to me and talked to me about, like, you know, especially I remember like high school and college of, oh, my parents want this for me, but this is what I want. And I remember having this very strong longing for them to have what it was that they wanted rather than going for what they felt they should go for. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, I love coaching people who are, you know, in that place too. It's an opportunity for me to help them see that. As a coach, I don't tell people what they should do, what they shouldn't do, but it's just asking questions to, you know, point at different parts of themselves and bring that to light and fan the flame on it, and so that they can realize, yeah, this is what I want to be doing. This is my dream. So often we, you know, are living other people's dreams because we want to please. We grew up wanting to please our parents, or, you know, for some wanting to avoid displeasing them. But, you know, like they're there for support and to, I mean, there are exceptions, but you know, parents are there to support us. And so children naturally want to please. And as they grow up, they want that. So sometimes there are people that just don't look within themselves for what they genuinely want. There was even a baking show I was watching, and there was a woman who was doing accounting, and she's like, I'm doing accounting because that's what my dad said I should do, and that's what I'm doing because he said that's going to be the best career path. But I love to bake, and in all of my spare time I bake. And she was an amazing baker, and I just wanted to start crying, because it's like that's what she should be. That's not what she should be doing, but that's her light, that's her spark, her passion. That's what's fulfilling.
It's the thing that makes her come alive.
Yeah, and she was saying, like, if I can win this competition, then, you know, I know my dad will see that, you know, I have potential to be successful in this and to make a living and to be okay. And so, you know, there's just so much there where I'm like, I want people to just live with the utmost passion and sense of fulfillment for themselves. And yeah, others will be happy to see them happy, hopefully. And if they're not, then that's a relationship to be worked on. But to honor oneself.
And it's interesting because sometimes you have to sometimes you're absolutely able to take things that you're passionate about and turn them into revenue for your life, and sometimes you're not. And sometimes you have to decide, how can I do the things I want to do and still live the life I want to live? Like, for instance, one of my passions is kayaking. Right. I've really loved kayak, but it's not ever, like, I'm not going to ever be a professional, right? I'm not going to be the kind of person that can turn that into revenue.
Yeah.
Maybe if I wanted to get into like product development and kayaking, I could do that. But like the actual, like, getting out on the water and kayaking, I'm not ever going to have sponsors sponsoring me. I'm not that good. It's just something I like doing. Yeah. So instead, it's like, how do I develop a lifestyle around like the business that I have that gives me the freedom to go kayaking when I want to, right? To take my kids out when I want to, and like having that realization and like coming through and figuring out, like, how do I take the things that I'm passionate about? And that's just one example. You know, it's like, you know, also cooking and other things, like all the things that you like doing. It's how do you design your life in a way that you can do and experience and use your passions to help other people or yourself or whatever, and still, you know, pay the bills.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's true. And there are also then what comes into play are self-limiting beliefs where, someone's like living with the mindset of like, this is how far it can take me. And all of a sudden, when you start to kind of quiet those self-limiting beliefs and, move them to the side, all of a sudden it's like, wait, yeah, I could do this and I could take it there and I could
Yeah.
take it there. And, there are even more possibilities, which is one of the things that I do when I'm coaching people is to look at situations from different perspectives. And what that does is that accesses a different part of the brain that lends itself to greater
Yeah.
creativity and
You're
resources.
asking better questions, right?
Mhm.
Like how far could you take it?
Yeah.
Right? Like, for me, like just as an example, we just said I'm never going to be a professional in kayaking, right? I'm never going to be a professional, which is like, it's a shut off type question, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't open the brain to creativity on like, how could I become a professional?
Yeah.
And like, what would it take to be a professional in kayaking, and how could I get sponsorships and some of those things? And when you ask those type of questions, it changes the whole conversation you have in your brain.
Yeah.
And like, I've just already had those conversations, so like I know that's not the path I want to go down.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but like, that's the idea, right? Is how do you approach something where you're using questions saying I can't,
Mhm.
or I'm never going to, that are shutting down the dialogue in your head, and asking better questions that open up that dialogue, that
Yeah.
turn your brain on.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of, with those self-limiting beliefs, a lot of it goes into storytelling of like, oh, well, I was never, that strong or that good in sports. And so, I just don't have it in me. And so that's the story that you live is like, well, I'm not, made to be a professional kayaker. I mean, I'm not saying like that's
Yeah.
you, but that's an example where someone, just they buy into a certain story. Well, this is just not the path for me, or this is not what I'm cut out for. And once
Yeah.
changing that story, then all of a sudden there can be a huge shift.
Yeah, like I had an experience with my son. He's 8 years old now, or nine. He's nine. It was a couple of years ago. He was like seven, and he was in gymnastics class. And one of his buddies in gymnastics is one of those naturally gifted kids who, like, doesn't matter what he does, he's just good at it, right? And he can do a round off back handspring at 5 years old, and doesn't even have to practice it, like, kind of thing. And his form for cartwheels and the stuff that he's doing on the bar is all just perfect. And my son's looking at him going, he's like, I'm not as good as that kid.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I have to practice every day to like be half as good as he is,
Yeah.
right? And he noticed that really quickly, and because it's a friend of him and they hang out all the time and do this kind of stuff. And I was like, the difference is, because I know his family, and I know the other kid is like, he doesn't have to try, so
Yeah.
he doesn't,
Right.
right? Because he's got talent. And I was like, hard work will trounce talent every day of the week,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, if you will put the work in, I
Mhm.
was like, you will get to a point where you're better than he is, right?
Yeah.
It might take a while, right?
Mhm.
You're young, right? And testosterone hasn't even hit your system yet, right? But if you put in the work now and you put in the dedication towards it, there will come a time where the hard work will outpace the talent,
Yeah.
right? And you can be as good or as competitive as you want. And I was like, the magic comes in when you have someone who has that talent and the dedication for hard work, right? And
Mhm.
that's where you get Olympians from. But
Yeah.
but for someone who, like, my son doesn't have the natural born talent, but he has the desire to work for it.
Yeah.
He could go really, really far with that,
Mhm.
right? And most people don't realize how far, you know, the hard work will take you if you want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And not just in that specific area, but in all areas of one's
Yeah,
life.
in anything.
Yeah. That
Right.
resilience, persistence, work ethic, that's something that takes work and practice, like, strengthening a muscle.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting to talk about the like, sort of where you came from. What I want to, like, and we've been talking about this a little bit, is but what your superpower is, right?
Mhm.
So it's what you do or build or offer this world that helps solve people's problems, right? Like what you use to help slay people's villains, right? Their internal villains. And I know we've started to sort of hinted at it a little bit here in the idea of asking questions, but if you could name it, what would you say your actual superpower is that you really use to help people, get to the next level in their lives?
I think it's compassion. There's just this like, and it comes from within. I feel this just like really strong sense of compassion, and people pick up on that when I'm talking to them. They can, feel that there's that compassion that creates safety. And I think that so compassion as that superpower, what it does is it unlocks things. And as soon as something is unlocked, then it opens up this whole treasure chest of limitless possibilities. And so it's almost like that compassion is the key to unlocking one's potential.
Yeah. So one of the things I find really interesting about the word compassion, and I think this will be an interesting discussion, is that people think compassion is a lovey-dovey word, right? That like compassion is a thing that that mothers have for their children, right? Like, they hug their children, they sit them on the knee, and they teach them, and they do those things. And I think that's what compassion is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true, it is part of that. But compassion is also like watch what happens to that same mother when a kid at the playground knocks their kid over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. That's also compassion, right? If you go and mess with a mother bear's cubs, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Right. And that's part of that compassion mindset, is that the compassion also has a bit of aggression. Mm-hmm. Where when someone tells you I can't, it probably part of that compassion conversation is no, that's not right. We need to fix that. We need to change that and break that down. And passion is not it's not a fuzzy, good feeling thing all the time. Sometimes there's a rough edge to it that sometimes you have to help, push someone. And, if you really love them, right, you're not going to let them flounder. Right.
Right. Yeah. That compassion holds someone's best interest in mind and is able to, see things with empathy and, with wanting to understand and to want to, support and have that connection.
Yeah. Compassion doesn't I guess my point is compassion doesn't necessarily mean nice. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, it can be, but sometimes it's like, hey, no, that's wrong. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And let's push past it. Let's fix something and move forward. Right. So a lot of times it's going to be in helping them ask better questions of themselves.
Right.
And being tough on their answers.
That's true. And I think that, so compassion is a feeling that, can start with tenderness. It's really a key to being able to see things from another person's point of view. Of, let's say there are some, managers where they might say, oh, my whole team is like just completely floundering and they're a bunch of, losers, and I don't know what they're doing. And so then, that is not being compassionate. But so compassion is not, oh, I'm going to hug everyone and, take everyone out to lunch. And I know they're having a hard time, so I'm going to do all I can to help them. Like, that's not compassion either. But saying like, what, they're having a hard time. Something's not working for them. That's, that's where compassion starts. And then it's taking that compassion that's kind of like, lighting that fire to the next level of saying, now let me seek to understand what's going on with the team, with the employees. Let me start by looking at myself, because oftentimes, someone, an executive will be doing things unintentionally that then have a domino effect on the team. So first, it's important to look at what am I doing that's affecting others? And that compassion lends itself to the desire to search, to be curious, to want to connect, to want to change. If you don't have compassion, there's almost a lack of caring. There's an irreverence. There's a, kind of almost selfishness in a way.
Yeah. And it's such a big word, right? Because, you're talking about compassion. It's like not like you just mentioned, it's not necessarily just a willingness to, I want to make it better for them, but it's like, I can be, maybe it's me that I need to change. Maybe it's something in the environment that needs to change, but there's a willingness to change whatever it is in order to help the other person achieve the goal that they want to achieve.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe it's in the other person, maybe it's in the environment, maybe it's in you, maybe it's in the situation, but it's a willingness to tackle that problem and take care of it for, in the best interest of the other people that are involved.
Yeah, right. And usually that compassion starts with oneself, compassion for oneself. And, to say like, okay, I'm not perfect. Let me acknowledge what might be going on with me, and then, look at what's going on with others. So, acknowledgement is a part of it, and then acceptance and saying, okay, this is the situation, and then to be, kind to oneself and not let those saboteurs then start to, beat you up about it.
So if the superpower yourself is having that compassion and understanding it, is it also learning how to impart that kind of compassion to, like when you're working with executives, teach them how to have that kind of a viewpoint?
Um, yeah, I think, there are efforts made in, kind of changing perspective and awareness that lend itself to to being more compassionate. So I wouldn't necessarily go in and say like, I'm going to help you be a more compassionate person per
Yeah.
se. But it definitely lends itself to that compassion. Compassion is, part of our best selves. What helps us thrive as humans is, to have that gentleness and kindness, and to not beat ourselves up about things, and to be willing to accept what might be hard to accept, and to be able to kind of have that emotional intelligence. A lot of it is linked to emotional intelligence, positive intelligence, which resides in a different part of the brain than the opposite, which would be, the saboteurs and the inner critics and the judge and all of that.
Yeah. So, in speaking of like in terms of it being a superpower, one of the things that I have seen is not very common is the ability to take yourself out of your own head and transition your perspective into the person that you're working with and see the situation from their perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the word for that is. I don't know if it fits in the compassion umbrella or not, but obviously it's a skill that you have. Would you consider that part of one of your superpowers?
Um, I definitely, yeah, I wouldn't say it's a superpower per se. I do seek to understand from, another person's point of view, but in working with clients, my approach, I was trained at the Coaches Training Institute at CTI. And the whole approach there is about being proactive, and it's seeing the client as naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. So I don't need to necessarily understand from their point of view or see things from their point of view or put myself in their shoes. It's
Mm-hmm.
really about helping them to look at the world through different lenses, to, process their own experiences differently, to experience what fulfillment looks like, and to ask questions that help them, unlock different parts of their brain. And there has to be that compassion in order to be fully present for that client, and to really like kind of be holding that space. And the structural integrity of holding that space is very much linked to compassion.
That's really interesting because you said something there that I have not heard before, and I want you to talk about it a little bit more. Is like I don't have to see the world from their perspective
Mm-hmm.
in order to help them understand their world better, right? You have to be able to ask the questions that unlock their brain. Talk a little bit more about that because I've never really heard that from a coach's perspective. And like, what does that mean?
That means looking at them with this very open curiosity, anything that's unassuming, non-judgmental. Whoever this person is in front of me is someone, it's almost like, a child where they're like, gosh, I've never seen this before. This is completely new and different. And well, if they're describing a situation, well, what's that like? How does that serve you? What's there for you? When you're doing that, what becomes possible? All of these really powerful questions that send their mind to different parts of their brain. And it's like, kind of like ping pong, like, oh, what is that? Okay, they'll talk about like, well, I was doing this and doing this. Okay, great. Sounds like, you're on autopilot. What energy was within you? Oh, I was tight and anxious. Oh, what's it like to feel tight and anxious? Oh, it feels like I'm stuck and I can't move. And, what's that like? So all of a sudden it's, just really like getting in there and exploring the mind and the body and the spirit, so that people who, don't even think about it, like someone will be talking And I'll say like, oh, I see you're tapping your foot. What's that about? And they're like, well, yeah, I am tapping my foot. I guess, I don't know, I'm kind of excited when I'm talking about this. And so then they start to like increase their awareness about how they really feel about something, or they're talking about like spending time with family and they're wringing their hands. And I'm like, oh, you guys see you're wringing your hands. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize how stressed I get when I talk about it. And so, yeah, it's like, that's their point of view. And I'm just helping to uncover and peel away the layers.
Right. So you're sort of approaching someone's thoughts and mentalities about the thing they're doing like an explorer almost, like you're exploring their mind with them.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
really cool. And that's how you sort of approach your coaching relationships, is with that kind of a mindset.
Yeah, we are co-explorers, and there's no like, the coach has the power, the client has the power. It's the relationship that has the power, and the coach and client empower the relationship by showing up, by being fully present, by being committed to that growth and learning.
Hmm. Yeah. I always tell people, like, when we get on and do coaching calls, the mindset that I always like to have is like, the if I'm ever going to make a recommendation for someone,
Mhm.
first I have to have all the information, right? Like, if you go to the doctor and your arm hurts, it's like, what's your diet like, and what's your, what you like, you have to explore, and have to get all the bits and pieces. So, like, I'll get on a coaching call with someone, we'll spend 2 hours just talking through everything before we even get to like prescriptions, or so to speak, right? Like, what things that we might do to change them, because you're just exploring, like, what does your business look like? What do your clients look like? What does your product set look like? And like all the things that we do in my business.
Right.
Um, right. Because generally we're not doing performance coaching, we're doing marketing coaching. It's like, how do we speak to their audience?
Mhm.
And so we have to figure out like who their audience is, and what the problems their audience have, and like what that customer's journey looks like. And so we spend a lot of time doing that, right? We explore together.
Right.
And a lot of times what you find is, like, they've been doing a lot of this stuff on autopilot, and they've never really thought about
Mhm.
all those things. So we're just defining it for them, helping them define it by asking them smart questions while we explore sort of their world.
Exactly. And it's, part of it is like, well, what makes sense about that for you? And if they're responding, well, this is what everyone says I should do, then all of a sudden, like, that's a yellow flag of like, okay, well, what are your thoughts about that? Or what's really true about that? People will buy into like, this is what the experts say. It's like, well, what's true for you about that? And, then you kind of send their mind somewhere else too. So yeah, that co-exploration, and even, getting like really deep down into the root of what's going on, rather than, talking about the symptoms, just like, you mentioned with the doctor, then you're not going to just look at, symptoms. If you're a really good doctor, you're going to say like, what's the root of this? What's really causing this? And let's, talk about that, because that is what is going to bring about change.
Absolutely. So the other side of a superpower, right, if we're talking compassion, is the fatal flaw,
Yeah.
right? So the fatal flaw is, like Superman has his kryptonite, Batman's not actually super, right? He's just rich and dedicated, right? If you could say, what is something that has either held you back or kept you from doing the things that you want to do, a fatal flaw you've had in your business, but more importantly, what have you done or set up or done in response to that to help overcome it and move forward? So other people who might suffer from something similarly, might be able to take something from that.
Yeah. Well, I think, with every strength, there's, an upside and, a challenge. And so for me, like, having that compassion is great because I care so much. And so that really motivates me to, be fully present. The fatal flaw in that is that sometimes I care so much that I can get, feel frustrated if, someone is like, doing something that is counter to what they really want. They'll say that they want this and they're making progress, and then a saboteur will, kick in and they're being, they're avoiding or doing other things. And I'm like, I start to feel like, okay, why are you, making these choices? Why are you choosing, everything is a choice. Like, why are you choosing this way? Like, and so there's this like trigger this internal like frustration. So what I then need to do, because obviously like that's not good if I let it come across to the clients, and it's not good for, it's not helpful.
Yeah, good for your own, like your own well-being even.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I need to let that compassion soar and not, be riled up. So I just, I access patience and to say like, I am doing all that I can to help this individual. At the end of the day, it's their journey to, relinquish any sense of, responsibility and, wanting to control things. And this even applies to children too, as with young children, then as many times as we say like, please don't do that, don't, and they do it again. It's like, there's that compassion of like, they're learning, they're growing, they're doing the best that they can. And I'm here to support them because I care and want what's best. And I can see that and keep moving them towards that. And so to not let that become a personal anguish or, so that's
Yeah. One of the things, like if we were to, it, it's like a personal investment in someone else's results, right? That can be like, but it's not your result, right? It's their result. And when you buy into it too much, then it's not helpful to them or you, right? And one of the things that we put in our we have a little sign up in our house called the agony principle, right? And the agony principle is something that I had to put up for my wife, because my wife has that problem. She homeschools the kids, and just like as an example, my son is really good at math. He's really good at some other things, but like when it comes to reading, like reading was a struggle for him. It's really hard, and he's gotten a lot better at it. But over a while, it was like pulling teeth to get him to read, and the problem we were running into is the person who would get frustrated at the reading and progress and whatever that was my wife. And basically the agony principle is the one who feels the pain is the one who's motivated to make the change.
Yeah.
Right. So for us, when we're working on like, how do we set up discipline and how do we do things in this, school, is like, how do we set up the incentive structure? So if my son's not doing the work, that he's the one that's feeling the results of that. And when he does do the work, he sees the benefits of it. Right? Is like, how do you set up the incentive structure? But in the same token, as a coach, is how do you work with someone so that, like, if they're, how are you helping them to see the detriments of, to feel the agony when they make a decision that's not taking them to their highest and best. Right? Right? Because if you feel the agony, it doesn't help, right? It's not going to help them change. So you have to help put the agony on them when they're not taking the path that that they could be taking, right? That's best for them. So it's interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are, rather than so the feeling the impact, I think the way that I usually talk about it with clients is around values. What values are you stepping over and doing that? What values are you allowing to be stepped on in that experience? And so it's like a matter of honoring certain values or not honoring values, because when one has that internal motivation, it's much more effective than when it's a external locus of control or motivation. So helping them to connect with what they really want, what values they really want to honor, and turning the volume up on that, and then the actions that follow as a result will be more in line with that place of resonance. It's also, looking at the growth mindset and to praise every improvement, even the slightest improvement. So when there are little steps, like, with a child learning to read, with someone trying to have more patience, to say, hey, look what you did. You've got it. You look at how you are now compared to where were you last week? Where are you now? And then, that motivates them.
We have dance parties with the kids all the time. Dance parties.
Dance parties.
We do dance parties to celebrate everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's that feel-good feeling. So rather than avoiding pain or agony, there's that desire to, bring out that pleasure and that pride. And, whenever someone's doing something that is, something to be recognized and applauded, I would say, like, how is that making you feel? And then they're connecting with not just what they did, but that feeling that they get that rises up within them. And that's the best motivator.
Yeah, one of the things that we do all the time with my clients when we're building like instructional material is that their clients, you always have generally the two biggest motivators are escape from pain and arrive at pleasure,
Mhm.
right? And generally speaking, the escape from pain is more powerful than the arrive at pleasure, but it's best if you can figure out how to hit both of those. So
Mhm.
we'll talk through what the escape and the arrival looks like for their clients. It's like, okay, where are they now that they want to escape from, that they don't want to be? What do they, we call it we look at be, do, have. You
Yeah.
know, what is it that, character traits that they have that they don't want? What
Mhm.
are things that they have to do that they don't want to do? Right.
Yeah.
And, what is the things that they don't have that they wish they had, that kind of stuff, things that they want to escape, pains. And then the flip side, what are the arrivals? Like, what do they want to be? Right? What are the character traits they want to have? What are the things that they want to have? What are the stuff they want to do? And we look at like, how do we build the training material in such a way that it takes them from that escape from pain to that arrival of pleasure?
Yeah.
Because, we figure if, we know this about the human psychology, how do we build that into our training? And it sounds like you're doing the same kind of thing. It's like they have, if they're stepping on their values, that's an escape from pain. You're helping them move so they're not stepping on their values. But also, what does it feel like when you live with these values at the forefront, and you're getting that arrival to pleasure as well? So you're helping them see both sides of that, which really helps motivate them.
Yeah, it's bridging that gap, and it's looking at who they are and who they're becoming at each step of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to say you had a common enemy, right? All your clients, if you could go, like the first phone call you get on with someone, if you could get in and just take one thing and remove it from their lives immediately, and you know that everything that you did with them would be better and faster and more effective because it's the common enemy you're constantly fighting against. What do you think that would be?
Oh, it's definitely the saboteurs. With Shirzad Shamim, he's done a tremendous amount of work on identifying saboteurs, which are the inner critic voices, and there are 7
Mm,
identified. And so when I first start working with a client, I really try to hone in on, which are their top saboteurs. It could be the pleaser, the avoider, the hypervigilant, the hyperachiever. Those are the voices that are going to be self-defeating. And so I bring that to a client's attention, have them notice when it's showing up, and really like become aware of it, and then learn how to strengthen that muscle for the positive intelligence part of the brain in order to quiet that. And it takes practice, just like building a bicep muscle. You need to train it and work it and reinforce it. But with positive intelligence, the same thing can be done with that part of the brain to strengthen.
that's really interesting. I want to do two things for me real quick. Repeat the name of the guy who's done the research on it. Does he have a book that talks about that?
Yes, it's called Positive Intelligence, and his name is Shirzad. It's Shirzad, and Shameen is the last name, Chamine.
And then, okay, so we'll make sure we get that into the show notes for people if they're interested in looking that up. And real quick, do a you said there were 7 of these voices. Do a
Yeah.
quick like recap of each one, and maybe people will be able to sort of see that in themselves just by sort of hearing you talk about them real quick.
Well, so I appreciate your enthusiasm on that. What I think could be even better is on the positiveintelligence.com website, there's an assessment that takes like 5 minutes to complete. And I'm getting no royalties from encouraging this. So there's nothing in it,
Yeah,
but it's so effective and quick and very accurate. So it'll show immediately your results after you do this 5-minute assessment, your saboteurs in order of greatest to highest to lowest, so the ones that show up the most based on your responses, and then the ones that are at the bottom. So
yeah,
that, and the judge is the universal. It's the one that's saying like, how could that person be doing that? Oh, look what that person's doing. Oh, how could I be so dumb? How could that person be so ignorant? And so that's the judge that everyone has. It's the universal. And then there's, as I mentioned, the pleaser, avoider, hypervigilance, hyperachiever, see, I guess a few others that are not at top of mind, but they're all on the positiveintelligence.com site, that assessments about halfway.
And those are for people, you know, if you've ever seen in Hollywood, the little red guy and the little angel guy, these are all the different like personalities that the little red guy takes on and
Right.
whispers in your ear and keeps you from doing the things that you should be doing.
Yeah, or like the light side, or the, what is it, the dark side and the light.
Yeah, and the light side.
Yeah, yeah, it's very much like that. And you can almost like, hear that sometimes when, once I'm working with clients and we talk about how to bring out this inner wisdom or sage voice, then, when they're talking about something, I'll say, well, what does your sage voice say to do? And they'll, connect with that, and they'll be like, I need to have the courage to do this. Like, that brings out this
Mm-hmm.
part of them that is, serving their best interests. But and with the positive intelligence assessment, going back to that, once the results come out, then you can also click on the bubbles at the top of the results page, and it gives a description of each of the saboteurs, where they come from, what lies they tell, their origin. So it's quite thorough, more than
Yeah, then what we could cover here in a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, that's really interesting because one of the things that I talk about when we do our instructional design coaching is like you have to help people identify the enemy,
Mhm.
right? Identify the enemy, because once you've identified the enemy, they'll have motivation to change.
Yeah,
And anyways, so it sounds like that's a cool little assessment. People can go and see, identify the enemy in their own heads,
right.
that's keeping them from doing what they want to do.
Yeah, and it's great because it tells you like the lies that they tell. So I'll be working
Hmm.
with clients sometimes, and especially executives, they'll have a hyperachiever, and they'll say, "But this has made me successful," and then it's like, "Yes, you have become partner, which is something that you are very proud of. At the same time, how's your relationship with your wife, with your children? How's fun and recreation in your life? How are you balancing health and wellness?" And so all of that might be suffering. So it's really like it's gotten them there, but it hasn't been serving their best interest because it's operating from a place of fear. So the
Hmm.
saboteurs, they bring up fear of failure, fear of rejection. So you're trying to avoid those things through those actions. So when you're driven by avoidance of fear, of pain, of agony, then your ability to access the creative and resourceful part of your brain is shut down. You're more in that fight or flight survival mode. I must do this. I have to get this done. And as soon as that part is quieted and you're using that sage voice to achieve, then you're operating from a different part of the brain. That's, like I said, the positive intelligence part, where it's like, okay, what's going to make this effective? You're coming from a place of like openness and courage and safety.
Have you ever read Tim Ferriss's book, The 4 Hour Work Week?
No.
So it's a really good book. It's mostly about like outsourcing and building building business and that kind of stuff. But one of the things he talks about in there is he has a section on quieting fears.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, most people will build like a dream list, like the things that they want to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, one of the things that's really effective is to build out a greatest fear list, right? Is like, here's, if I do this, right, if you fear, rejection,
Mm-hmm.
what's the worst rejection that could happen,
Yeah.
right? And then what does my life look like as a result of it?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I come back from it if it happens,
Right. Yeah.
right? And so like you're building through and you're going through all the things that you fear,
Mm-hmm.
and realize that like even if I take these steps and have these things happen, and like you know what's the worst thing that could possibly happen?
Yeah.
And then you realize that like even if the worst happens, not
Mm-hmm.
only do I have a plan for it, but I know I would live through it and it would succeed, and the chances are that worst thing is not going to happen, right?
Right.
It's going
Exactly.
to be something, farther forward on the better list if you try, if you move forward.
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely. Well, Dale Carnegie, and see, he has a book about how to reduce stress in your life, and one of the principles is to take a situation and look at the worst case scenario, figure out what you would do, and then once you figure that out, then you have that energy to improve upon the worst case scenario. And usually that worst case scenario doesn't even happen, but at least you're
Mhm.
like, if that happened, this is what I would do. I got it figured out. And then you can,
Yeah,
move.
then you've quieted the fear voice because you're like, there you go, that's how I would do it. Like the guy who's shouting, you might get rejected, you might get rejected. You're like, yeah, okay, we're good. I know how I would handle that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
And you
And
can
all
move
of a sudden
forward
there's
and
freeing up of energy to then designate towards improving upon that.
yeah. That's a cool, interesting discussion. So, I want to talk about your driving force a little bit, right? So, just like Batman fights to save Gotham, or Spider-Man fights to save New York, or Google fights to index all of the world's information for us, and at our fingertips. What
Yeah.
is it that you fight for, Lisha?
I I fight for people's right to love the life that they live. We all have days that we don't like. We wake up and we're like, I don't
The
like.
pursuit of happiness, right? The right to pursue happiness.
Exactly. Sometimes we don't like our kids, we don't like ourselves, but we all deserve to like love what we do and who we are. And so it's helping like one person at a time, just like, saving one life at a time is, and helping. And as I grow in my business, it'll be on a larger scale of helping one to many, and like helping people just love their lives and live into their lives even more fully and with greater fulfillment.
Yeah, it reminds me of that starfish story, right? There's 1,000 starfish washed up on the seashore, and there's an old man tossing this starfish back in the ocean, and the kid comes up and he's like, why are you doing this? You can't make a difference for everyone. And he
Mm-hmm.
picks up a starfish and tosses it back in. And he goes, makes a difference to this one. He
Mm-hmm.
makes a difference to this one, and he tosses it in. All right, and when you're working with someone, but what's interesting is you actually probably have a bigger impact than that because of the type of people you're working with. You
Mm-hmm.
have a ripple effect of you work with them, and then they go forward and do their work, and they're able to provide value at a higher level because of what you've unlocked for them.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. I know that's like it fills me with joy just like thinking about that. Yeah, it's like that ripple effect exactly.
yeah. So it's really cool, and it's a cool place to be in when you have something that you're helping people do that. And not to bring politics into it or anything, but I love the idea that it's like we're one of our nation's foundational principles. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That like your mission is right in there with. It's like I'm helping people live that part of the American right, the American dream of how do I pursue that happiness, right,
Yeah,
and become that person.
right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very cool. Okay, so the next thing we talk about is the hero's tool belt, and it's very practical, right? Maybe it's a big magical hammer like Thor, or maybe it's just a bulletproof vest like our neighborhood police officers wear, or maybe you just really love how Evernote helps you organize your thoughts, or how you do key slides in Keynote. Do you have any tools that you use on a regular basis? Notepads, cool software apps, tools that you use to help you do what it is that you do with your clients.
Um, I don't know. I'm always learning. I watch YouTube videos and I read and I, just learn from colleagues and the community of coaches that I'm involved with. And so there's that learning and growth. And so because my brain is part of my tool,
Mm,
and I also think about like my body and spirit. And so it's really like being self-aware of how am I taking care of myself, because I am that tool. People are relying on me to be my best. And so I need to really, continue to sharpen that knife and make sure that I'm getting rest. I, have that presence of, mind and body and spirit, and, that I'm just in the place that I need to be to best hold space for others.
That's a really interesting point, right? Because it ties right back in earlier to the stuff we talked about with the fatal flaw
Mhm.
of sometimes we'll get so invested in someone else,
Mhm.
right? And I've noticed that a lot of achievers, like high achievers, will do this, right? Where they'll be so focused on either the result or the thing that they're doing or the person that they're helping that they forget that
Mhm.
they have to be at their highest and best in
Yeah,
order to do that,
right.
right? So we'll let our own self-care, fall by the wayside
Mhm.
in order to achieve something.
Right.
Um, and it's a wrong way to look at it, right? And you have to sort of start with how can I be the best version of myself so I can come in and help those people. And that includes more than just your mind. It includes your body and your health and your rest and things like that. I know rest is like a dirty word in the entrepreneur world, and it shouldn't be, right?
Yeah, right. It shouldn't be, because it's like maintaining oneself. Like, we are the
Hmm.
machine that needs to perform at its best. So, just like if you have a factory, then you're not going to let the equipment go by the wayside and just be doing. No, you're going to make sure it has like enough lubrication, and that you're cleaning it, and that you're updating it if it needs to be updated, like, or upgraded. So yeah.
Yeah, so right, and you have to have some sort of, right. You have to take care of yourself. One of my buddies, he does writing and preaching and stuff like that, and he talks about having an athletic hobby, right? Because it allows you to play and rest and take care of your body and stuff like that. Uh, and I think it's a great idea. And like entrepreneurs, a lot of times you have to be given permission to
Mhm.
go out and actually, like, you can take a day off, right?
Yeah.
You can take an afternoon off and go do something that's just for you, right? Or just for you and your family or something like that. And it can be a great benefit. So, here's Lisha and us giving you permission, go out and play.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I'll ask myself, I'll say, like, how do I want to show up for my clients? And so, those kinds of questions can really help to, get our mind going. Or how do I want to show up for my children? Like, what kind of a parent would be? What do I want to be? What kind of a coach do I want to be? And then looking at, okay, then who do I need to be in order to comply with that, in order to, to meet that description?
Yeah. So just out of curiosity, what is your favorite thing to go do and play with? It's, with you, your kids, your husband, or yourself? Like, what are some of the things that you do to relax and do for fun?
Well, we love to go like family outings. I love, getting out and just, we'll go to like Monterey or Half Moon Bay, or, go hang out with friends. And I find, like, just, I'm an extrovert. So I get
Yeah.
filled up by talking to other people. And, that's what gives me energy. And, it's funny, just the other day, like, in the morning, I was kind of like, going along. And then I took my kids to a birthday party, and they were having fun. And, I was chatting with the other grown-ups, and I came home and I felt like recharged, because I was, getting that social exposure. We were out and about, and, seeing the kids enjoy. There was kind of that vicarious pleasure that I got from that. And so, sometimes it's
Yeah.
just a little things. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but just
Yeah, it
that.
doesn't have to be big things. And I know for me, we travel full time, right? So we travel the country with the wife and kids, and I know, like, we try to regularly get out and do hiking and kayaking and swimming and stuff like that. That's sort of like the things that we really enjoy doing. And then, like, going out and visiting the places we're at, and going to the museums and seeing places, and eating the food, right? And one of the things I've really noticed over the last couple of years of traveling is that, like, a lot of the memories that are stand out is like good food, right? And good conversations you have with people that you've met different places. So finding ways to have the time to do that, to take advantage of those things, and giving yourself permission to actually go out and do it, and realize that I could take all of the hours I have available in the day and put them towards pursuing whatever goal I have, but
Mhm.
realize that, and it's something that it's taken a while to realize, because I spent at least 5 years early in my business spending, doing the whole 12 to 18 hour work days, and realized that when I cut it down to, like, now I work an average of 4 to 6 hours during a day,
Mhm.
and the rest of the time is spent playing and recharging and doing and actually, like, living life, I get more done in the 4 to 6 hours than I ever did in the 12 to 18.
Yeah, it's about the quality, not the quantity in that
Yeah.
case. So true.
So,
Yeah, I talk
so
about balance, and there's a whole kind of wheel of life that I'll do with them sometimes to, kind of look at each of these different, areas, like a pie, break it into 8 pieces. So there's career, there's money, there's health and wellness, and, then smattering of others. And so, I look and I say, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you in, this slice, and, each of the slices, And then I have them connect each of the dots that they made. And you really get this visual of like, oh gosh, my life is rather bumpy, or, oh, my life is a well-balanced wheel. So having that visual snapshot of how
Yeah, I think you'd really enjoy my friend's book. It's called The Whole Life. Author's name is David Stein, and he actually has an exercise in there that he calls the Whole Life Wheel, where he puts the things all on there, and he has them connect them, and he talks about how it's like, if your life was a bicycle and you've ignored your physical thing, right? Your wheel doesn't turn; it bounces down the road. And if your life is rough, maybe that's part of the reason why.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you tired of trying to write webinars that don't consistently convert? How would you like to have a webinar that effortlessly created sales in your online business? You can. Introducing the Webinar Alchemy Workshop. Webinar Alchemy Workshop is an online masterclass that will help you write incredibly persuasive webinars for your online courses quickly and easily. Using what you learn in this class, you can build a webinar that educates your entire audience while still creating sales. For a limited time, you can purchase this masterclass for only $7, and you'll get the exact framework I've personally used to help my clients sell more than $1 million worth of online coaching and training just over the last year. Simply text the word alchemy, ALCHEMY, to 444999, and I'll send you all the details.
The music is by Purple Planet Music. Visit www.purple-planet.com.
You can roll down the road of life pretty well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about your personal heroes, right? So, if you're a fan of Hollywood, Frodo had Gandalf, Luke had Obi-Wan Kenobi, Robert Kiyosaki had his rich dad. Who are some of your heroes? Were they real-life mentors? Were they authors in books? Were they speakers? Were they peers who were just a few years ahead of you? And how important were they to what you've accomplished and how you've gotten where you've gotten so far in your life and your business?
I don't know. So it's interesting because I was thinking about, the word hero, and it's almost like, it's put someone on a pedestal that is, it almost seems like it's not sustainable, because then, it's like, and heroes, like you said, there's, there are fatal flaws and they can falter, but I almost, see it as like, people who have inspired me, who have lifted me up. And those people have been family members where, I've seen qualities that I admire and that inspire me to bring out more of those qualities within myself. And I look for inspiration whenever I'm out and about, whenever I'm talking to people, gleaning what I can to, then just internalize that and to further my growth and learning as a result. Even in this conversation that I, can see there's inspiration that's pulled from that. And so it's almost like, light that comes in and absorbing that. And so, I think everyone has there are heroic moments and people who, I really admire and inspire and am inspired by. But it's more like moments or their contributions to the world that I take rather than kind of putting them on a pedestal in a way.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So last question we ask on every interview is your guiding principles, right? So if we were to bring it home for our listeners, what are one or two top principles or actions that you sort of put into practice every day that help you do what you do? And something that maybe you wish you had learned when you started your path, 14 years ago or whatever. You said you started when you started getting into this coaching thing.
Let's see. So something that I do each day is just practice being very present and kind of, in certain moments, take pauses throughout the day of just thinking about, what are my feet doing? And just stopping, because so often we're like, go on to the next thing. What did we just do? What are we about to do? And so that present state of mind and that pause is very nourishing. And, that helps me go forward as my best self. Also gratitude is a huge one, especially when, I'm maybe feeling irritated, then I can turn that irritated energy into a softer energy by, instead of thinking about what am I grateful for in this moment, and really focusing on gratitude, focusing on, the silver lining. People often say gosh, you're so optimistic, and, you could look at the bright side of anything. And I find that to be, just so instrumental in living a really happy, fulfilling, enjoyable life, is to be able to look at the bright side, because there are so many ways of looking at situations. So
Yeah.
looking, what's the gem in this? What's the opportunity? What is there to be grateful for about this? And what is the learning? So, you know,
My
all richness
my
of,
business partner and I talk about the gratitude thing as being aggressively optimistic,
Mhm.
right? So it's you off on the road and almost runs you off the road, and instead of being angry at them, the response is, "Oh man, they're probably you know they're probably rushing their wife to the hospital, kind of thing, and and they didn't even realize they cut me off, right?" Like
yeah,
it's like how can you in your own mind be aggressively optimistic about the things that are going on in your life? And it's interesting what that does to your outlook on everyone and everything, when you can have that ability to be grateful.
right.
Uh,
And there's the compassion too. Like, gosh, that person must be having a difficult time. Maybe they need coaching. Just kidding.
yeah, maybe they need some help with what they're doing. Yeah, and the other thing you said too is I think super important, and it's learning how to be present in the now.
Mhm.
And it's such a hard thing, right? Because now is fleeting,
Yeah.
and we think the future is solid, but the future also doesn't exist, right?
Mhm.
But you can think about the destination where you're going all the time, and it never changes, right? But the moment that you're living in is sort of like fluid, and it moves and stuff like that. So it's hard to focus on, but you have to realize that like the the now is all there is, right?
Yeah.
And realizing how do you learn to put yourself and just sort of enjoy the moment that you're in,
Mhm.
um, as you transition towards whatever, wherever you're going, whatever you're doing.
Right. It's basically, it's kind of like that state of flow.
Hmm.
And it's one of the reasons too why, improv is something that's becoming more and more popular, is because it's forcing people to be in the now, to just, it's when you're in the now, then it overrides the prefrontal cortex. And so you're going beyond that thinking, analytical, managerial part of your brain, and just allowing oneself to be present and in that flow state.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an interesting skill to start looking at it, thinking of like, how can I be here, right? And it goes down. It helps with everything too. Like I assume when you're coaching with clients, like they say when someone is listening to someone else, they listen for an average of 17 seconds before they start planning the thing that they're going to say next,
Mhm.
right? And that's the whole prefrontal cortex taking over. But it's how can you be present and listening to someone, and how can you be present with your children and present in the work that you're doing, instead of thinking about whatever the next thing is and the next problem, or whatever problems the thing that you're doing now is going to create, right? And it's like we always try to live, even if it's just a few moments into the future, we're always living in the future, instead of like, let's get this thing done and do this thing right here. Even if that's simply like, let's just sit and listen.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. But it can be just like so freeing to have that experience, because it quiets, a lot of the volume that can get really loud in the head, and just
Yeah.
slow things down.
Yeah. I like to sit out in the morning, like in one of the camp chairs, and just sort of listen to nature. That's it's a way that it can help sort of like quiet everything else and just sort of enjoy the
Yeah.
now.
Right. It's
So,
experiencing life rather than moving through life.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so last thing I do on the show, it's not a question, well, sort of a question. I call it the Hero Challenge. Do you know someone in your network that you think has a cool story that would be useful to bring on to and sort of share their story with the world? Question is, who are they, and why do you think they would be a good fit to come on and share their story on the show?
Huh. I don't know. I get excited about so many people's stories. I'm like, I know the people I have
I
amazing.
know all the people.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh. No, I'd have to think about, like who in particular. But I feel grateful that that question, inspires gratitude, and like, I know people that are really amazing. And, even on like Twitter, that is great because it's given access to an even broader range of people. And I've, met some incredible people that way that I otherwise wouldn't have met. And one such person actually comes to mind for your show that I think would be great. So I'm happy to share the information with you if you'd like.
Yeah. So why do you think that person should come on?
So it's someone who has a really inspiring story of, overcoming tremendous challenge and prevailing, and then using that experience to help further others in their lives, and to really dedicate how they grew and learned from their experience to benefit the this furthering of others in their success and happiness.
Cool. Well, we'll connect afterwards and get their name and information and see what we can do to bring them on the show. So the last thing I always like to do is make sure that people know where they can find you if they're looking for help or coaching. So two parts to that: who is a good fit? What kind of our listeners who are the kind of people who should reach out and look for you? And then second, where can they find you if they are interested in reaching out and talking to you?
Thank you for the opportunity to share. Those that are they're in a place where they're stuck and they want to, be able to overcome whatever that stuckness is, and to move past it and to accelerate their success in getting from where they are to where they want to be, to bridging that gap. Those also who feel like, I have it all, yet something is missing, and wanting more out of life. And my website is CoachLisha.com. It's Lisha. And then on Twitter, my Twitter name is Coach_Lisha. And on Facebook, it's Coach Lisha.
Awesome. So they can find you at CoachLisha.com. Mm-hmm. And so if someone is looking for, basically getting out of that stuck place where you're like, I know there's a place I want to get to, and I don't know quite what's holding me back. Obviously you've spent the last hour listening to us talking. Lisha has some really cool thoughts on this, and I know from someone who's done coaching a lot myself that you definitely have your finger on the pulse of like what really helps people sort of unlock those things. So if you're in that spot, I would definitely recommend reaching out to Lisha, right? So it's CoachLisha.com or Coach_Lisha on Twitter, or Coach Lisha on Facebook. Do you have a preference on any one of those for where the best place is to find you?
Whichever people prefer. On Twitter, I post every day, at least once per day. And then Coach Lisha, I have, when you scroll down, then you can connect with me and send me an email directly through the website and read more about me. So, and
awesome.
Then Coach Lisha, I have events posted that I'm going to be leading. So, yeah.
Yeah, I am terrible at the Twitter, so I always tell people to reach out to me on Facebook because I'm much better at the Facebook than the Twitter. So, anyways, thank you so much, Lisha, for coming on. It's been a joy talking to you and really getting to hear some of your story and see what it is that you do and how you help people. So, thank you again for coming on the show. You have any final thoughts you want to leave people with?
I would say just really take time to appreciate how precious life is, and that there is only one chance in your life, and you owe it to yourself to make it one that you love, and seek support if you're thinking that can help you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, Lisha. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure.